Salanitro, would you lead us?
I will certainly will.
What, Tommy? Hold on a second. He's in the pledge, yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, well, we have, I think, a relatively light agenda
Want to
and
call the roll?
quick meeting, so Mr. Nowotnik, without further ado, would you please call the roll?
Okay. Commissioner Carvin.
Here.
Commissioner Rosenberg is being represented by
Gioffre
Trustee Gioffre Rednick.
Here.
Commissioner Salanitro.
Here?
And Commissioner Brett.
Here.
Perfect. Okay, does anybody have any questions, comments on the minutes from the last meeting? If not, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Perfect. Comments from the public? No, please. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Linda.
Hi. Linda Wells, Friends of Rytown Park. Just a few updates. The first 7 benches have been installed in the park along the promenade near where the pavilions are. And we've gotten a lot of positive feedback in terms of appearance, comfort, et cetera. The only thing is, because they're within the ADA guidelines, they're not close enough to the fence to put your feet up. But that's the way it goes. But I think people are enjoying them. And unfortunately, we had an informal coffee, which included some of the contributors. And if you haven't been down to the park to see the benches, take a minute and go down there and take a look. We're going to be reaching out on a limited level for 6 more benches,
Great.
which we hope we can have sponsored and in by the end of the season before park staff is not there. And I'd like to take this opportunity, unfortunately there aren't many of them here, but I'd really like to extend a special thanks to the park staff. They were terrific in terms of assembly of the benches, moving them into place and installing them within a very reasonable amount of time, and with great esprit de corps. So I would publicly like to thank them all for that.
Thank you so much. It's music to our ears. Thank you.
Yeah. And then for those who didn't know, our wonderful duck feeder was vandalized, and the hopper for it's been replaced, and hopefully, we won't have a continuum of having to replace it. But again, I also think that program's gotten a lot of positive feedback from the community. It's a novelty for the children to get the feed. People don't seem to squawk about the price, and it could be a win-win for the ducks, the pond, and everybody. So we hope that'll continue through the rest of the season successfully. And then the third was that I had mentioned we were going to do some planting on the corner of Dearborn and Forest. That's been done. And it's so far so good. So we'll see if that lasts through the season. And our plan would eventually be to put in some more perennials in that area. Right now it's a combination of perennials and flowers, but it kind of dresses up the corner. It looks nice. And that's basically it.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thanks for all your hard work from
Okay.
the Friends of Rytown Park. Thank you. Other questions, comments from the public? Yeah, please, Linda.
One thing I had was, maybe this is old business, I'm not sure. Looks to me like the drainage pipe situation's been rectified, but in its wake is a mud bath of track marks and lawn dishevelment. And I don't know what, if anything, could be done about that to kind of mitigate it for the season, because that's where people park and drive.
Okay, Mr. Gioffre, do you want to?
And maybe off-season, we could do some grass seed
Yep.
planting, which would help, I think.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was going to include that in here. It's very uneven, and so our staff is waiting for a nice rainy day, not too hard rain, where it would soften it up, and then they're going to begin to level out the entire area that was upended. And as far as planting for grass, it would make no sense to plant right now because we're parking cars there. So as soon as we start hitting the end of the summer to the fall, we're gonna reseed the whole area.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Gioffre. Wonderful. Other comments from the public?
Dom Servi, Rybrook. I attended the last meeting, and I asked what the procedure was to hire part-time workers. And they explained to me that all the applicants are sent down at the beach, and they go to designated people that look at their resumes. They go to the ones that work, handing out tickets, and the other ones go to, can't even think. But anyway, I made it my business to speak to two of the people that looked over these resumes. And the procedure is that if they think that they're qualified, they hire them on the spot. And I specifically asked them if when they get hired, is there a problem? So they said no. The other guy, Larry, who runs the security, I asked him specifically the same question, that if they get hired, is there any question of not getting hired? They said no. Once we hire them, they're on. And in fact, Terry said that if you had worked there before, if you apply next year, you get hired. Well, in my case, that didn't happen. But anyway, out of the clear blue sky, I get a call from the park foreman, who I worked with for 8 years, and I just want to say that he's a wonderful worker, and the town is very lucky to have him. So I sat down with him, and we spoke about my resume and all. And he said to me that he would hire me in a minute, but it wasn't up to him. He had to go see his boss, who was the park director. So I went home, and the next day, I made it my business to go back again to talk to the park director, who also is a friend of mine, and he's doing a wonderful job, and I take him by his word. He says to me also that he had no problem putting me on, but he said it was out of his hands. So if it's out of his hands, he said that it went up to the main office. So my question is, if it went up to the main office, who did it go to? Did it go to Nick Mecca? Did it go to Hope Vespia? Or did it go to Bishop? That's my question.
Mr. Servi, how many years have you been coming here asking the same question?
I've been coming here for 4 years.
Right. And I think we've given you the same answer consistently for 4 years, haven't we?
No, that's not the question I asked. I was told by Bishop, who was sitting up there, that the procedure is you go down the beach and they check all the resumes. I asked Terry and I asked Larry. And I was okayed by the park foreman and I was okayed by the park director that they would hire me. So he said it was out of his hands.
Well, this is all information to me, certainly.
Well, if you want to ask him, he's sitting right behind me.
Well, we don't discuss personnel matters in public, but I'm certainly happy to sit down with the park foreman after this meeting and find out what happened. And, you know, I think we've given you the same answer for 4 years. I admire your diligence
Yes,
and
Sam, I am
tenacity
very
in coming
persistent.
here. And at the end of the day, I'll talk to our park foreman. As I say, we don't talk about personal matters in public.
That doesn't really answer my question.
No, it doesn't.
I asked the question.
And I told you we
And-
don't talk about personal matters in public.
Okay, now, if it's personal matters, that's one thing. But this is not personal. This is a question I asked at an open board meeting. Okay.
Well, you're asking. Sorry, I think you're asking.
I asked where my resume went and why did it go up there. If all these other people got okayed by what Bishop said, he said that it goes down the beach, and at the last meeting, you don't have to believe me, just put the DVD on and listen to what he said. He said 3 people hire these people. I was okayed by the park director,
Well,
let me finish, who is the boss. He runs the whole beach. And you're trying to tell me that if he says okay to somebody, he can't hire nobody? I can't believe that. That's almost impossible.
Well,
It's almost impossible. And you keep telling me the same thing for 4 years, okay? Now, Terry told me that if you worked there previously, you get hired automatically. So when I was laid off, I put a resume in. I wasn't hired. So there's double standards here. There's standards for people that get hired, and there's standards for Mr. Survey. So I asked you a question, and you didn't give me no answer, because I don't think you really have an answer, because I think what I just said, I proved my point, that I am getting the business. And I know why I'm getting it, and there's a couple of people in here that know why also.
why are you getting it?
Because when I was laid off, I filed a grievance, and it went to court, okay? And I lost.
What was the grievance about?
The grievance was that when Mr. Villanova made a new ruling that you can only work 6 months, and after 6 months, you get laid off. Well, I was there for 12 years. I worked until...
I'm just trying to understand. So you're saying that you wanted the right to apply for unemployment insurance? Is that what you're telling me?
No.
Because
No.
What was the grievance about then? I'm misunderstanding.
The grievance
so you
was-
basically wanted to work apart? I'm just trying to understand. You want to work in the summertime,
Yes,
then apply for unemployment insurance.
Yes.
And have the public pay for you while you're not working.
Exactly.
And then come back again next year and get it.
Yes.
And work 12 months around there. And that
Yes.
was the grievance?
Yes.
And you
No.
lost?
No, that
okay.
wasn't the
Just trying to
grievance.
understand.
I gotta finish explaining.
Okay.
So they did that because they didn't want to pay in unemployment. But if you look at the records, they're still paying unemployment, okay? And I just would like to say one thing. When you work for 8 or 9 months in this country, if you get laid off, you're entitled, if you make your quarters, you're entitled to collect. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well,
That's the way the American
Mr.
system
Cervi,
works.
I know for a fact, you're absolutely correct. In the
Okay.
previous administration that was generating a $500,000 loss picked up by the taxpayers, people were working 8 and 9 months. There's no, Mr. Nowotnik, does anybody work for us 8 or 9 months?
Oh, there are people working 12 months.
No, for us at the park. No, now.
Now? No.
No,
Nobody.
no one.
There's nobody collecting unemployment?
No one, no,
No,
he said,
there
he said
are-
no one's
there are
working 8 or 9
Oh,
months.
well, I just
There
wanted
are
that clarification.
claims that are being filed, yes.
Oh, okay. So, but I didn't finish, though. So when I was put on, and I think it was maybe April, there was 4 guys that were hired with me. 4. I was the only one that was let go. Those 4 guys worked until November. Okay? So I filed an age discrimination charge. Okay? We went to Peekskill, and in the interim, they offered me a job. Okay? I was in, let me see, I was there about 5.5 months, 5.5, 6 months. They offered me a job in security. Okay? Now, I've been in maintenance for 12 years. Why do you want to put me in security? And they wanted me to work from 6 o'clock at night till 1:30 in the morning. So I couldn't take the job because my wife had a big heart operation, and I'm not leaving my wife from 6 o'clock at night till 1:30 in the morning. So when I went to court, it was no discrimination because they offered me a job. And I know why they offered me a job, to cover their backside. That was the whole thing. So we went to court, and I lost. I accepted that, no problem. But now, and I just want to, make this point. I'm not here begging for no job. You understand? I'm here because I haven't been treated right. I've been treated like somebody that you throw out in the street and you throw them under the bus. That's how I've been treated. Okay? And you keep telling me the same thing all the time. We don't talk of personnel. Well, this is not really a personnel. I asked the question, and I can't get an answer. And every time Noto comes up here, he tells me the same thing. Oh, we can't talk about personnel. Well, when am I going to find out what's going on? I want to find out why I was singled out after I got okayed by the park, the boss. He's sitting right behind me. Why was my name taken out and sent up there? And now I ask the question why I was up there. Nobody gives me an answer. What's that all about? I proved my point. Now somebody got to give me an answer. That's why I keep coming here, Joe, for 4 years.
And I think you get the same answer you got for 4 years.
Yeah, I've been getting the same answer. And you know what? That's not the right answer. I haven't been treated right. And if you want to know something, that's a retaliation. That's just what it is. From when I went to court, and you don't want to hire me because you want to make an example out of me. Well, like I said before, you're not treating me the way I'm supposed to be treated. In fact, that's a discrimination if you want to know something. You're discriminating against me. And it's been going on for 4 years. And I'm surprised those people up on the board allow this to happen. I really am surprised. Because you know where I'm coming from. And so do the people that are watching this television know where I'm coming from. I haven't been treated right for 4 years. I put my application in, I get the same answer. Well, where am I supposed to find my answer? And excuse me for hollering, because I'm a little Italian and I get a little excited, so you have to excuse me.
Yeah.
Joe,
So
if I may?
Sure,
If I may?
Yeah.
The commission, I've been on the commission for, how long have you been? 8 years?
8 years, yeah.
This commission does not hire part-time personnel. I think the only person we've ever hired as a commission has been the Parks foreman. I shouldn't say the Parks foreman. Fred Gioffre, we hired him.
Yep.
I hear you're saying, and I think it's a worthwhile discussion, but the commission is not charged, one of our charges is not to employ or hire or deal with personnel matters, especially on a part-time basis. It should come from the staff and Bishop. Now, maybe the commission is hearing something and we have an opportunity to go into executive session to learn more about it. But I as a commissioner, can't answer your question because we've never got involved with the hiring or things of that nature as a committee, as a commission. So I wish I could answer your question individually, but I can't.
Well, what happened to all the people that they hired?
Again, we don't get
They were
involved.
hired by the people that said
don't-
they're
we-
okay, and they got hired, okay? Now, I was approved by 2 top guys.
In the administration process, as I understand the administration, how it works, we don't get involved in that level of detail of hiring the part-timers, et cetera. We only get involved in full-time employment opportunities, and even that is limited. So you have very good questions. You're asking the commission, and I, as one of the commission members for a long time, we've never gotten the opportunity to say who gets hired or who doesn't get hired. We've had disciplinary issues that we've dealt with as a commission because we have to in those regards, but we stay away from the practices of hiring employees as you're suggesting for part-time basis. We can go around this thing for a long time tonight, and I think what me as a commissioner would like to maybe just sit down in the executive session and understand it better, because then we can answer your question. I can't answer your question.
You know, I've been asking for 4 years. When are you going to sit down? It's 4 years now. I keep getting the same thing. You heard what the supervisor said.
We
You come
resolve.
here for 4 years and you're getting the same. That doesn't answer my question.
Well, we resolve the fact that we have competent staff who is charged with the hiring of personnel during a seasonal basis. So if you weren't hired, I would think that the answer would come from the people that you've applied to, not us. We can't answer your question.
I applied to the foreman 2 weeks ago, and I went to see the park director who's sitting behind me. And I want to clarify one thing. He's a friend of mine. He's been a friend of mine a long time. And I take him at his word. So if he told me it's not in his hands, then whose hands is it in? If he can't tell me that I made a decision on you, but it's not in my hand, well, whose hands is it in? Is it in the supervisor's hands? Is it in your hands? Is it in Bishop's hands? Whose hands is it in?
I would think
don't understand
I would
this.
think the buck stops with Bishop. Is
Oh,
my
yeah?
opinion.
Well, excuse me for interrupting.
That's what I think.
He says to me that he has nothing to do with hiring. Now, all of a sudden, he's in the picture now. So what's going on here? What are you
He's the next.
taking me for a
He's
fool
the
here or
high.
what?
He's the highest level before the commission.
So
the highest level, huh?
before the commission.
Well, what about the
But we
park
don't-
director? What is his duty?
Obviously, the park director
He
is
runs the whole
responsible
beach.
to Bishop. So I would think it's between those two guys. I would think logically that would make sense to me that since we don't deal with the hiring and firing of employees, it's got to be the people below us.
Mr. Survey, you're coming here tonight alleging that Terry told you she can't wait to hire you.
No,
but she passed
no,
up.
you got that wrong.
Then you've alleged that Mr. Gioffre, they can't wait to hire you, and somehow it didn't happen. That's the first point. So that's new information that I told you I can't talk about an individual case in public. That's the first point. Second point is I will ask Mr. Gioffre and Mr. Nowotnik to make a presentation on hiring policies at Rydtown Park at our next meeting. You're absolutely correct. You have every right to know what the hiring policies are. So, Mr. Nowotnik, could you make sure?
I was told.
No, Mr. Survey, I've been very patient. You're supposed to have 3 minutes. We're about 15 right now. I am answering. I'm not going to answer any individual questions. You heard that answer for 4 years.
Just to
Now, I
clarify
will, however, indulge you.
Yeah, go ahead.
And as I said, I will ask Mr. Gioffre and Mr. Nowotnik to make a presentation on park hiring policies next month. In fact, I'll make it a PowerPoint presentation, so there's absolutely no doubt about what the hiring policies are and the procedures.
And just to add one small point on this, which is the policy of the board to not discuss personnel matters in public is for your protection. If there are individual reasons for specific hiring decisions or not hiring or the decision not to hire someone, if those decisions are being made at whatever level, if they're made on a personal level based on your personnel record, you would not want us to discuss those issues in public.
I would, because I'm proud of what I did. I worked for the village for 43 years, and anytime any one of you want to check what kind of worker I was, go down to town hall and find out what kind of worker I was. And I also worked for the Rydtown for 12 years. And ask some of the people down there what kind of worker I was. So if you're worried about that, telling the people about my record, I'm giving you the okay to tell them. You can ask anybody in Portchester, because I've been here for a long time. I worked in government for 55 years, okay? So you don't have to worry about that. But I don't like the way I've been treated. And I'm a resident and a taxpayer, besides. And the advertisement that you put in the paper says that if you're a resident, you get preference. Well, I got some good preference. I get the same thing over and over. I've been thrown under the bus, and I don't think it's fair. Thank you, and bon aid.
Any other comments, questions from the public? Please.
Hi, guys. Very briefly, two quick questions. One is, after our last meeting, I was wondering whether or not anybody had spoken or had anything to tell us back about discussion if you had with John Ambrose about the shuttling back and forth.
Yeah, I actually had. I don't know if anybody else did. Did you have a chance to speak to him?
I did not.
I did. I don't know if anybody else did. Yeah, I had a conversation with him and I told him that there was a very, very serious concern on the part of the commission that, one, there was no real authorization for him to go back and forth, and two, that with the speed with which, his drivers were going back and forth, and three, that make sure that there's nobody past 12 o'clock. He told me he understood the concerns and he would deal with it in a way where the transferring back and forth would be done on an extremely safe basis. And that, I didn't want. I think the instruction was to talk to him, not to. And so,
No,
in any case,
I
he
agree.
said.
That's all. That's all you said.
You
said you would speak to him about it.
Exactly. And so I did indeed speak to him now, but I haven't been back to check and see. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've seen anything, but I definitely spoke to him.
No,
yes.
I haven't. I'm not in a position to be to
I
monitor
basically,
the situation.
so
we just wanted to bring it to your attention.
No, so I shared with them
all.
your concern, our concern. Mm-hmm. Shared with them the community's concern and said, it needed to make certain that that concern was taken into account. Said he would make certain that it is, and I haven't heard any complaints since then. But I will follow up with them, and to reiterate and say it was brought up again. But I did talk to him.
I would just ask, maybe we can have the staff give us a report at the next meeting about maybe the frequency of the shuttles and if they see an improvement about speed and safety concerns.
Fred,
that
did you
were
get a chance to talk to John as well?
Larry's trying to set up an appointment with John, and...
All right, would you make a point to follow up with them and then also point and set up a call with me and John as well while you're in the office? I want to talk to him as well.
Okay.
So if you could, one, you talk to him, and two, arrange for a call just to reiterate the message.
And I think we had this discussion when Tiki opened up, because he was transporting food, prepared foods, back and forth, which we thought was an issue with the health department, that he was he able to do that or not, and whether or not what his agreement was with the county on managing his food business out of Seaside Johnny's and transporting the food, the prepared foods, over to Tiki. I remember that about 3 years ago. It was a month after the Tiki was open. We had complaints about him transporting.
This is purely transporting patrons.
Oh, patrons, not foods. So he stopped the food. Now it's the people.
He's got a three bench golf cart, and it's a shuttle.
Right. Anyway,
the other thing that I was
Same
It's
concern.
actually the Tiki Zine.
right.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
It's right.
Can't blame him for
Maybe we
being
should talk to the
ingenious
Taxi
about
and
it.
Limousine Commission. I don't know. Bring it up with them.
All right, so it's not food. That's good.
Second was certainly credit where credit is due. That amazing the efficiency and the completion of the drainage project. Kudos to everybody. The question was, I think Mayor Sack was saying, like, we'll do it now and we'll figure out how it's going to be paid for. I guess that'll come under discussion at some point with maybe an executive session or.
I think potentially an executive session,
Okay.
but it is a city drainage issue.
Oh, okay.
But certainly the park benefits. So it may be that
Yeah,
I'm not sure
complaining
what's gonna
because
happen
it got done
there, but
and it looks,
I don't-
it's great.
yeah.
And to Linda's comments, I'm sure they'll get around to the beautification aspect of it at the appropriate time. One last compliment, not a comment, but this past weekend where it was kind of busy, the parking situation on Saturday, there was just a few rows of overflow parking into that field, and to their credit, they were all just in the first couple of rows. They weren't all over the place. So, and then on Sunday, when it was a much busier day, everything was just very orderly, neat, and controlled. And to your credit.
Thank you so much, Rose.
you.
Thank you. Well,
Thank you.
I wish I could take credit, but it's Fred and Bill and Terry and Larry deserve all the credit. Great. Okay. Any other comments from the public? If not, can we get our management report, please, Mr. Gioffre?
Yeah, would you like me to highlight it? Or
Yeah, just highlights. Yeah.
Because I was going to say, you could ask me any questions about
Yeah.
it.
Well, is there any? Well, actually, that's even easier. I think there's any questions for Mr. Gioffre? So we're off to a pretty good start. You have financials there, Bishop, or do they?
Yeah.
Yeah, financials are a little bit later.
But
Okay.
I have finances on the second page.
So I guess if we're going to, instead of you giving a report, if you want us to ask you questions on what we've reviewed, I guess the question I have is, I was very pleased to see that you've come up with a solution for the off-leash dog owners, where you've got your maintenance crew opening the gates at 6 a.m. and
The early
Right.
morning entry?
yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I'm sure the residents who want to use that off-leash dog policy appreciate that as well. In your summary, there were two things that kind of raised a question for me. One of them is that you said that whoever is going to be checking for the dogs at that point is going to be asking for the identification card. We've had this discussion at the city level whether or not they need to have both the card and the dog tag. And what we decided, at least for enforcement purposes with the police department, was that we were going to ask the police department to let people have one or the other, so that if the dog is wearing the tag, if the owner doesn't have the card, that shouldn't necessarily require a ticket.
I did the same thing.
Okay, all right, okay, just making sure that we're consistent on that.
I didn't know that about you,
Okay.
but when my guys asked me, I said, listen, either one is good, if they have one or the other.
Okay,
So
terrific,
check
that's
the
great.
dog, for the tag, or if they have the card. That
Right.
went smoothly, and it's working well.
All right, that's great. And so, and then the other question I had is, you mentioned a ranger on duty from 7 a.m. to help enforcement. And my question on that is that new, or have we always had a ranger on duty that early? And if it is new, is it necessary if we've got police enforcement that comes on, I think the police officer, I'm not sure what time he shows up, but,
Well, the reason why is multiple reasons, because people that are not there for dogs can get in for free,
Okay.
and they avoid paying for entry. And that's the only
okay.
thing that really
I understand.
costs
Now
us
I
any
understand
money.
it. Okay, appreciate that.
We open the gate at 7 with our maintenance people.
Right,
He comes in around 8-ish,
okay,
the security guy. No, he's in there at 7.
okay,
So
okay.
we covered it.
All right, thank you, appreciate that.
Other questions for Mr. Gioffre?
Don't forget, you have extra money for sand if you need sand.
We got to, I have to tell you, the beach never looked better.
It's great. I
That's
stopped by
very
the other day.
And what, just a general opening of the park, I was down there a couple of days this week as well. I concur with Russ. It was well managed. Quite frankly, you know, I think you mentioned to me you're looking to get more staff on. I was a little concerned Sunday night. Beautiful evening, a lot of people. And I think we only had 3 security guards on. No problems. I was just anticipating a problem.
Sat with Larry this morning. I told him, look at the weather going into the weekend,
Okay.
and let that be the deciding factor. If it's going to be a good, clear weekend, I want 5 during the day and 4 at night.
Okay. I
So
think
we
that's
covered
right.
that.
Because I have to say, on a Sunday night, and it broke nice late, so people were staying late, including myself. And when I left around 6:30, you know, just a lot of people.
Was I still there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what we talked, exactly. You were still there. Thank you, Mr. Gioffre. Any other questions for Mr. Gioffre?
Just one. What's a throw bag? Your report says you purchased throw bags for water emergencies.
Well, I put in there
You'll see that later.
a draft of what my security chief and my lifeguard chief put together as a first draft on safety at the beach when the lifeguards leave. A throw bag is, you throw the bag to the person, they grab it, and I haven't seen it,
Okay,
but we do have one, and our security guy's one who got
so
it.
it's like a PFD
It's-
that you throw.
Right, it's the equivalent of a donut.
Of
The
a
rope is in, the
lifesaver.
rope is actually in the bag, so it makes it easy. It's a one piece.
Okay, okay.
Beautiful. Any other questions for Mr. Gioffre?
Great job.
Thank you, Fred. Good work. I'm glad to hear those nice comments. Bill,
Thank
Terry,
you.
thanks for all the hard work.
Thank you.
Okay, this is the big matter for the evening. Mr. Noto, I've seen you arrived. I don't know if you had a chance to look through this resolution where we, well, look, I you know, on a serious note, I agree with Commissioner Brett that our dog off-leash policy seems to be working. And, you know, I talked to Mr. Gioffre in that certainly staff is no longer required to try and enforce almost the unenforceable prior to 9 o'clock, and I think we're getting better enforcement post 9 o'clock of dogs off leash, and we want to continue that. That being said, in a completely unrelated incident, we had a child bitten by a dog. Now, this had nothing to do with the off-leash policy. The dog was on leash, and it was around 12 noon. But anytime a dog, you know, especially a child gets bitten, that's problematic. And so it's got nothing to do with the dog off-leash policy. I want to make that 100% clear. But I did think we need to come up with some form of reprimand for the dog, you know, in the event that that dog bites somebody, especially when the dog's on leash. So, Mr. Noto, we were looking to figure out whether or not we can ban the dog from the park, or, you know, I guess some, and it is a little bit comical in some sense, but the
I was thinking of putting up a poster with the dog's picture on it and saying, if you see this dog, call 911. The honest answer is I don't know, and I'll tell you why. As I indicated in my email to you, dogs are considered property, so they're not allowed in the park without a human. And banning a dog is almost like banning a person. I'd like to look into it. I thought, as I had spoke to Fred about it, and it sounds like the owner is very upset and you know how some dog people have been as aggressive as their dogs about this, but apparently this owner feels very badly, and it was just one of, an unfortunate situation. So I thought it might be useful just to send him, I don't know if it's a him or a her, is it a him?
It's a him.
A letter saying, we've had this incident, and give him like a warning saying if it happens again, we're gonna have to ban the dog from the park. I'm not sure on the enforcement of that. I'd have to look into it, but I suspect.
Can I ask you?
You could.
A related question. What about I was talking to Commissioner Brett a little bit before the meeting. What about a fine? A pretty serious fine of.
I don't know that you can do that. Dog bites are governed by state law, and you would go to generally when a dog bites a person and it's severe enough, it goes to local village or town city court, and a local judge, actually has the authority to have the dog put down. I mean, as the most extreme measure, but there are other measures that judges can take. In fact, there was a relatively high-profile one in Mamaroneck recently. Where a dog attacked some people on the street, and I think the dog had to be restrained, and there was all kinds of limitations. And if it happens again, the judge said, we're going to have the dog euthanized. So I don't know that it's within our commission's capacity to issue fines for dog bites. I think I would challenge that and say you've got to call the cops and have me violated and take me into city court. That would be more likely to. By the way, which is what we could do. I mean, in this incident, if we called 911, the police are well within their rights to issue a violation and bring the offending person into city court and adjudicate it there. I mean, I don't know that we want to be in that position of adjudicating these things. I mean, I think we want to let the court system work its magic as opposed to us doing it.
What about Fred? What about what about the parents of the child that was injured? What's their? Could you just come up?
The child was taken to the hospital. The police took their report. The report is in there, and to be honest, I haven't seen that person with his dog since then. And he used to come every day because he's easily noticeable. Long hair, and just you can recognize him.
The dog or the person?
No, the two dogs. The two dogs are almost twin-like. They're same color.
What kind of dogs are?
There's some kind of
It says
terrier.
Schnauzer in the
What
police
is it?
report.
What?
It says Schnauzer
Oh,
in the police report.
So they're small schnauzers then.
How could the schnauzer bite the kid? It's a tiny dog. It's like
Tiny kid.
The kid
It
was
was a
3
tiny
years
kid.
old.
the dog would have had to jump up to bite the
We took a picture of it.
Schnauzer? We're doing this for a schnauzer?
But
That was like
Joe,
a
I
German
mean,
shepherd or something.
The only I only had one question, and logically in my mind, if the owner indicated that the dog gets nervous, that to me tells me that the owner has some responsibility to protect the general public. Do you put a muzzle on a dog? Is that reasonable to suggest? Hey, if you know your dog has tendencies that might not be, acceptable to the public nearby, you could take precautions.
There's been hearsay.
I don't know. I don't want to.
Don't have
So, I mean,
proof.
all right,
Humans
so
are
I have a
always
suggestion.
humans are always told to put muzzle on it, muzzle it, right? I don't know if the dog has
There-
more rights
there
than a
is
human being, but
hearsay that
almost sounds
one
that
of
way.
those dogs bit someone else at a different, maybe last year or something.
No, I'm not saying that.
I think that maybe what we should do is follow Mr. Noto's advice and send a letter to the dog owner, acknowledging that this happened, that it was unfortunate, and that it's certainly regrettable, but that we don't want it to happen again, and recommend that the dog owner, if it chooses to bring the dog back into the park, that it take precautions, including things like a muzzle, to prevent the dog from having contact, especially with small children. I think that that's probably the right way to go. I don't know that we have much other choice.
Yeah. I mean, by the way,
we can threaten that the police can take additional action in the future if this happens again, because they have the authority to do that. But
And there is civil liability, Commissioner. I mean, he is now responsible for the child's medical expenses.
Sure.
So, and if there were a violation in city court, there would be probably a requirement he pay restitution in terms of the kid's medical expenses.
Right, okay.
So you are liable for your animal if your dog goes out and bites somebody, or more often than not, it's attacking another dog. And we have that also, that situation, and then you are still liable for the medical expenses. Most people don't have vet insurance, but they will have medical insurance that would cover this. But, there'll be a deductible, and who knows? So, no, there is a definite liability here, and the owner should be aware of that. And again, if it happened in another location, the case of the vicious Schnauzer, which is, like, pretty funny, because they're such tiny little dogs. Yeah? Is he a big? And what's a large Schnauzer? Oh, 50 pounds? Okay, that's a bigger dog. Really? I thought they were the ones that killed the rats in the brewery.
Which they had a permit?
Okay.
Was the dog had a permit? It was permitted to be there?
I don't know. It was
really?
11:30.
All
I mean,
right.
he was on a
How
leash.
big was this dog?
You don't need a permit to have your dog on a leash.
Okay.
Mr. Noto,
So, yeah.
Off leash.
would there be any liability on behalf of the town, the commission, if the dog bit again with us having the knowledge of the vicious propensities
There is
and
always
allowing it back?
liability for you, and we went through this with the off-leash policy. There is always liability. We have insurance, and we're covered for it. But yes, we are liable for anything that goes on in the park. So absolutely, if somebody was litigious and got hurt in the park, whether it's a slip and fall or a dog bite or anything else, getting run over by Seaside Johnny's, truck, we are liable. So there's no question about it. Yeah. And
there's
being
nothing- is there
on
anything-
notice doesn't make us any more liable, is what I'm saying. I mean, yeah.
Is there anything we can do to mitigate that liability?
Well, the only thing you can do is that you put the owner on notice or you ban them from the park. But, I mean, people are going to come to the park, and if things happen, there's going to be...
Can we ban them from the park?
I'm not sure that you can ban them from the park. I'm going to have to look into that. I'm not sure that you can kick somebody out of a public park and say you can't come back. I don't know that you can do that. I don't know that you can do it. I'm saying a judge might be able to do it. I'm not sure that the Wrighttown Park Commission can do it because there's no criteria for that, and then it gets somewhat arbitrary. I mean, if a new commission comes in and says we don't want people in the park with dogs or wear blue shirts, I mean, it could get out of control. And I'm not sure you want that power, do you? I mean, you really want to be out there.
Ideally, I personally, if somebody has a dog that has bitten somebody else, at a minimum for the rest of the season, and they can reapply to come back, I think that we don't need a permit.
Well, I guess you could revoke, if they have a pass, let's say you could revoke a park pass. Okay. Then you get into the situation if they come a day, or when do we not charge if they come early in the morning and there's nobody there. I mean, those are the kinds of things, the issues I guess we'd have to deal with. But quite frankly, I'd feel much more comfortable if we called the police issued a violation, and a judge said, look, your punishment is you can't go to Wrighttown Park for the season, or something like that. I mean, then I would feel it had the force of law behind it, as opposed to a commission that doesn't have that authority.
And we did call the police in this instance, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a
And
report.
exactly, and did he go to court?
I don't know
Or
if
will it go to court?
I don't know if he was violated or not. It's up to the police to issue a violation.
Well, look,
I mean, it might depend on the severity of the injury. If it was really severe, the police might be more inclined to. I mean, I don't know if the police were there. They must have seen the child because they took the child by.
well,
We sent through
I saw the picture.
Oh.
Sam, Fred, come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the picture, yeah.
we sent through a picture, so it was just
Well, fortunately, he was bitten in his backside.
But it punctured.
It did puncture the skin. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure they had to do a
It could be
rabies.
traumatizing, too. I mean,
I'm
you
sure
know.
it's
Yeah, I
terribly
mean, I'm sure it's-
traumatizing. I mean,
yeah.
that's,
I had a question. You mentioned something about dog insurance, that homeowners, we
No,
have
vet insurance.
vet insurance.
Like we have medical insurance. You can
Right.
buy insurance to
You
cover
could buy
veterinary
it.
bills.
Oh,
Yes,
that's
but-
the only
but
type of insurance. I know other insurance.
Yes, vet insurance.
Okay.
For people that are real
Okay.
serious pet owners, you can get vet insurance, but it's not great coverage, but it does cover.
Does the homeowner insurance cover liability for the pet owner?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I know it covers it if you hit somebody on the golf course with a golf ball, because I've actually seen those cases.
Wow,
Not that
interesting.
I've ever done it myself, as bad a golfer as I am. But
Here's why I'm
it
asking-
might.
'cause
I
I'm
think
just
you'd have to
curious.
list the dog as on your policy that you're a dog owner. Because
Was
I've
it-
seen that question on questionnaires on policies.
Would it be far-reaching when when a person comes in for a dog permit, to have the town of the Wrighttown Park Commission named as an additional insured on their policy for the purposes of?
I think that is a stretch,
Is it far-reaching?
personally,
But
but I mean...
that's why I'm just trying to connect the
I
dots
mean,
here with
I don't know
insurance.
that... Well,
You said
there's
how
a-
we could insulate
well, there's a
ourselves even
procedure.
further.
Is
That
it
might
the
be
city
one of them.
that's, who's doing the...
city
yeah,
that does the
so the city
registration.
would, when you register to do the off-leash plan, the city could ask that question, do you have homeowner's insurance and is your dog covered? That's a fair question, I guess, because you gotta have to get a permit, right, and pay
Yeah,
a
you
fine,
have
a
to get
fee,
a
yeah.
permit, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you could, the
That's only
city
for
could
off-leash
do that.
though, right?
That's only
Just
for
for-
off-leash. And of
That's
course,
only off leash. I'm
this
saying
That's
this is
only
a
off-leash.
unique situation because this
It
was
is.
a dog on leash. Owner is clearly holding the dog on a leash, and according to the Fred, was cognizant of the fact that this dog gets nervous and bites.
Yeah.
Which is like, it means, yeah, he made that statement, so that's like,
Yeah.
that all translates into something pretty dumb taking place. Having a dog around children that you know is nervous and bites.
Yeah. It's like a
Trans-
roof that leaks only when it rains. You gotta
Right.
fix the
All right,
roof.
well, so
And you're in a
just-
park, it's
so-
not like he's alone on the street. You know?
Well, what I would, just to finalize this, unless there's other questions, comments, certainly we should send a letter to the dog owner as recommended. Also, that he recommended that he take precautions. I really like to encourage him to put a muzzle on the dog. I think it's an excellent suggestion, Commissioner Salanitro. And if you could just study, Mr. Noto, for next
I mean,
month,
I'm
if
not
you just
sure
take
where
a
I
look.
figure out where to look for this, but yeah.
If you just, so I'd like to,
Dog etiquette?
I think we've heard conflicting things. Somebody said it's up to us to make that decision, and if it's commission policy, I don't know if it was you, Fred, or somebody else. So that was the
There's always an
conventional
issue
wisdom.
with you, with this, and you would mean the commission, with setting policy and then being able to enforce it, because
Right.
you don't have a police department, so the enforceability is always shifted over to the city of Rye. But yes, you do make policy. You set the policy for the park, absolutely, yeah.
Great, all right. Thank you very
Yep.
much. Any other, any questions,
No,
comments?
that's it.
No, I think it's important that we react and not overreact. I think we have an obligation to address the concern because it's a small dog but there are big dogs out there and the same thing could happen. It could be, it really shouldn't matter the size of the dog or the size of the person that was bitten. It's an issue that we should react to and not overreact to.
Perfect, excellent. Hopefully we've done that. Are you happy?
Well, that's good. The muzzle, I think, sounds good.
Okay, back to more familiar territory, finances. Is this you, Mr.
Okay.
Nowotnik?
Yeah, I'll just give you the highlights here. If you want to start with the back page first, this just gives you some idea of the month of May. We had a very good month of May, and you'll see that even on permit sales, we're running ahead of last year. Parking, we're running ahead of last year. And even beach access, we're running ahead of last year. A lot of that was obviously opening weekend. We had a nice opening weekend of solid weather, and things went reasonably well. So the downside, however, is so far in the month of June, we've been closed for 5 days in the first 15 days of June
The rain,
because of rain.
right.
So, all of a sudden, the lead that we built up as of May 30th is now dwindled. I'm not sure if we're in a loss column yet, but we're...
You say loss vis-a-vis last year or loss?
No, just against last year, year-to-date
Right.
kind of thing. I mean, we don't really know the loss factor because there's no expenses there. I'm just saying in terms
No.
of revenue, I think we're behind. When you get to the financial report, I just want to call your attention to a couple of things.
Yep.
We're tracking, basically everything is tracking pretty well.
Yep.
I don't want anybody to think that the things are off there. But I do want to call your attention to other income, 13,701. And then down at the bottom, capital improvements, you'll see 9697.
Yep.
Okay. The situation is that 9697 is the cost of the 7 benches. All right, what the commission did was the commission fronted the money for it so that we could purchase it under the municipal pricing. That has been reimbursed. That reimbursement is reflected in your 13,701. So if you back it out, all of a sudden you'll realize that our other income is not quite as aggressive as it seems. All right, and again, they, Wright Town Park, Friends of Wright Town Park have reimbursed us for that. Other than that, everything else seems to be running okay. It's a little too early to tell. If you see some of the numbers look like they're bigger, that's only because we probably handled the payment a little bit more expeditiously. You know, like you look at uniforms down at the bottom. You know, last year we were 2,800. This year we're 6,200. Well, we processed the uniform orders a little bit more efficiently this year. In the end, you'll see that we're going to be somewhere in that $7,000 range at the end of the year anyway.
Perfect.
So there, those kinds of things are there.
Good.
But all in all, it's good.
Excellent.
Bishop, can you tell me, has Seaside Johnny's paid us for the dumpsters from last year?
Yes, sir.
And they also paid us all their rent from last year before
Yes,
the season
yes.
started?
Seaside Johnny's is 100%. Well, let's just say Seaside Johnny's
Is up to date?
and the town of Wright Town Park are 100% good through the end of 2014. Where he is behind now is he has not made his June payment, which was due June 1st, which is late as of June 10th. So we'll be dunning him again for that.
Okay, so when you have the conversation about his
Tiki Zine, we'll also have a conversation about where's the rent.
where's the money? Henry?
When you say you dung them, we charge them a late fee?
We have not, but what we have done is we've officially sent them a letter saying, hey, you know, you're behind. Your rent was due as of, excuse me, your licensing payment was due as of the 10th.
Thank you.
Good. Other questions?
No, I just want to comment, the staff must be doing something right to have this many permits purchased this year that early in the season, so congratulations on that.
The other thing that I wanted to mention, the Playland is only having fireworks on Friday nights now.
Yes.
So with the discussion about,
I'm one of those. Burn all
Joe?
Was it filed?
No, I
Sorry.
said the Playland is only having fireworks on Friday nights. We have a revenue stream that we anticipated from the Wednesday collection of monies. We're going to have a shortfall on the revenue side because of the fireworks, what do you think?
Yeah, we discussed all of this at last month's meeting, and the commission has ruled that we should just deal with it.
Okay.
Well, I think we're looking at, what, $3,000-$4,000 shortfall? Is that what we're talking about?
No, I think we were talking about close to 20,000.
20,000?
Yeah,
That's-
if you'll remember the number.
Wow, okay.
Okay, and you know, we had some ideas, but the commission felt,
That I remember, yeah.
right.
Okay.
Okay, community conversation notes, since we're not really fully quored, I'd like to postpone the conversation, the community conversation notes. Update to water safety procedures.
Yeah. I think that's more Fred should probably report on that. If you'll remember the near drowning we had last
Yep.
year, this now is a review that staff has done to how are we supposed to handle these kinds of issues. And I think a lot of credit goes to Mark Casada, Larry Miano, and Fred in terms of trying to be proactive and you know,
Oh,
putting
these are the
something
throwbacks.
together.
Okay. There we go. So basically, we've basically got equipment in place for the security staff to intervene in the event that something happens like it did last year?
Well, that's the next step. We'll purchase the equipment, but we're going to put out a final draft and then move forward with the recommendations by Mark Casada and Larry.
Okay.
You know, security and life.
And this is basically the deal, once the park's closed, is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Once the lifeguards are
Yeah,
gone?
after the lifeguards are
But
gone.
we'll be able to use it daytime and all.
Right. But the
Sure.
real use is post-park closing.
Right.
Like, again, I was Sunday night,
Which
6
we
o'clock,
discussed.
we close exactly, and, you know, people are there till 9 o'clock at night.
Friday nights also, when there's fireworks,
Yeah.
people are in the water 9:30.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was good preemptive planning. Thank you, Mr. Gioffre. Thank you so much. So you'll be implementing this by next month? Or
As soon as we can.
Okay.
There's some things there that are going to allocate funding, like the lights,
Yep,
and we just have to figure out the cost of that.
okay. I think you have our blessing, it's simply allocation of funds, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
So there's, I mean.
We'll find a way.
Godspeed, because I think that, I have to say, as I looked at the park on Sunday night, I did feel a little bit exposed, you know, with the lifeguards gone.
Oh, that way.
And I was not by my bathing suit, Mr.
That's why Terry and I put so
Salanitro.
many hours in, Joe. We worry about it, too.
Okay, great. All right, and then Bill Lawyer, you're going to be attending the Bartlett Tree Research Labs, and they're picking up the costs, is what I
Yes.
understand?
Yes.
And this is basically just to describe what's going to happen?
Well, you can see the agenda. They
Yep.
cover all the different aspects of tree care that's related to particularly public facilities such as parks and hospitals and
Where's
organizations.
it taking place? Charlotte?
So it's in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it's basically just a 2-day event. And it's what they do is they invite their clients and Rydtown Park.
I
is a
didn't
bit-
see this invitation.
What? Well, you sent it to me, so
I'm joking.
So I think it's, it means going down and coming back. It's a little bit whirlwind, but I think it will be interesting, and hopefully I'll be able to learn things that I can
And there's no
use.
cost to the town?
Yeah, it's covered by them. the whole
Excellent. I
thing.
think
great.
that, wonderful.
That's terrific.
Thank you all. Again, enjoy the trip, and you'll come back with a report? Excellent. Thank you so much. Any other questions, comments from the commission?
I was just reading the minutes because I wasn't here last meeting. You guys talked about the middle ramp, and you're using the first aid ramp for strollers and other people.
Yeah,
How's that
right.
working out?
Right now, that's just a backup plan.
Okay.
Well, actually, that's just not actually happening yet, is it?
Right, the report said that you're still using the steep ramp.
Yes.
Fred?
Fred, you just want to come up? I mean, I have to say, having spent 3 days there this weekend, I was a little surprised to see that we're still using the steep ramp.
We don't have a choice. That other ramp it's not feasible. So they're going to pay over here and then walk halfway up the road and then walk in that way. Plus, we'd have, it's not impossible if this commission wants us to do that. We monitor that fairly carefully. Our security guys are helping women with carriages, elderly people. We've been doing it for 7-8 years now.
So in your notes, your management report notes, there maybe was a slight reference that maybe there was another plan in the works. Is there another?
There was a suggestion by Bishop that we use the lifeguard. It's not really the lifeguard. It's a fence that opens right by the lifeguard
No,
house.
I know that. So I thought maybe it looked like maybe you had another idea in mind,
No,
but I just
no.
misread that. Okay, all right.
There was an idea that was, Mark Casada had come up with a different kind of a plan for the ramp at the middle beach entrance.
Okay.
So this had been proposed by him. He even made some drawings of it, and based on his experiences of being the captain of the lifeguards, he was very familiar with the topography and had the distances involved, and that from the way he said it, I'm certainly no engineer, but he said that basically you'd be just pouring concrete, which would, and I assume there's enough bedrock, and this would go straight out, and he thought, you could, given the fact that we had three bids that were all crazy out of the range that we thought they would be, that maybe we should fall back to this as a different way to do it, at least go far enough to see whether maybe the architect, Lisa Easton, could consider that and do some sort of a sketch of it.
Well, yeah, but we're
Yeah.
not going to be able to implement this.
We wouldn't be able to do it this season,
All right, so
obviously.
let's just talk.
But that
about
was
this.
the other
Okay,
plan.
So let's
Okay.
just
Thank
talk,
you.
hold on,
Thank you
hold
for
on,
that.
hold
No,
on.
I
Let's just
appreciate
talk.
Commissioner
Hold,
Brett, that was what you and I had discussed when we went down there.
Right, just to increase
Yeah.
the.
So hold
thought
on,
you
hold
meant
on, Fred,
something else.
because I was surprised, quite frankly, when I went down there that we hadn't transitioned to the middle gate. I thought we actually made a decision, didn't we, Mr. Nowotnik,
Use
to
the
move to the
first
middle
aid.
gate?
Yeah, I thought that we were going to implement that plan as a
Right.
backstop plan,
Right.
pending perhaps further analysis in terms
Right,
of the
so we-
architect looking at.
Right, so
I didn't know that.
yeah, so what that's what we decided last month,
read.
and then I don't know if we want to revisit it or not, but I think that what we thought it would be feasible, Fred, where you'd close off the steep ramp, just make it, just, it's out of use or whatever. And for people that had need to use the ramp, we'd have a security guard in front of the other ramp after they've paid. Because you have to, remember, they have the bracelet on now, right?
Yeah.
And if they needed a ramp, they would use that other ramp.
So they would go from the cashier's
Yeah.
booth to the...
Yes. If they need a ramp facility, that's
All
what
right.
they would do.
See, I had to leave early, so I missed that.
Okay, all right.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
That's
you
what
know,
happened. So that was what was decided.
pretty
Now,
important
so
we
you
do
want me
that.
to implement that?
I think.
And see how-
I think,
change
let's
the
try.
Fair to
Let's
do
give
that.
it a try.
Let's
I
try
mean,
that, yeah.
experimental
If you have a horrific, if it's a, just let us know, but I have to say, it's just an accident waiting to happen on that steep ramp. It's just an accident waiting. So I would prefer feel far more comfortable, close that off. You have the stairs, and we can use the stairs, but if you need the ramp, you need to use that middle ramp.
Yeah, well, and then even when people are coming up...
Same thing.
Have them go up the other ramp?
Up the stairs. No, so you'll keep the stairs
Close it
open.
off, the whole thing.
No,
Just the ramp.
no. You have stairs.
Yeah, oh, let them come up that way?
Anybody that can use stairs, go up the stairs and down the stairs.
Yeah.
So you can pay, and, again, I presume 70 to 80% of the people that come through can use the stairs.
Yeah.
You can carry the things, they can use this. If you can use the stairs, use the stairs.
Yeah.
We don't want people on that ramp.
All right,
So if they need a ramp, if there's an absolute need for the ramp, you want them to use the middle ramp.
okay.
Yeah.
We'll do it as an experiment and see how it works out.
Great. And if it's, horrific, just let us know.
Okay.
You know-
Yeah, it's horrific. No, I'm only...
We got it. Lisa's plan was a great plan. It was going to be an expensive project the way it was designed, and I don't know if there is an alternate design, but we did pay. The commission did pay for services.
Yeah.
I don't know what we paid her for that. I'm sure it was reasonable and fair, but we kind of spent money and we don't have anything to show for it.
Yeah, we
Kinda
have
feel a little
about
bad
$6,000
about
to
that.
$7,000
Yeah,
of
I
design
kind of feel
costs.
bad about it because we've been talking about this for a number of years now, and I thought we finally were going to, full steam ahead, get it done. I think we need to go back to the drawing board with something, even if it's something that's removable at the end of the season, dismantleable, whatever. I don't even know if that's a word, but something that that'll function for the needs of getting the people up and down the beach safer than it is now. Something has to be done.
Casada seems to have a decent plan. I know
Yeah,
we can do that.
the reason why, the construction plans that I reviewed, it all reinforced concrete. It's appropriate for the location because of the water conditions that'll come. You don't, listen, the seawall, Sandy came and took the seawall. You don't want to build something that Sandy's going to come and wash away. And I understand the design that she used. She designed it to withstand all of those tidal actions and stuff like that. And it is, a $300,000 and $400,000 project to do that. We can't afford it, obviously. So, the bids didn't come in high because the bidders chose to bring in high numbers. They based upon the design that was implemented, was put together. We need to design something that's practical, and I think we should do it in a way where we remove it at the end of the season.
If you can get a $40,000 job,
Even
back,
if
you
it's
can
an
get it washed
aluminum
away
ramp.
4 or 5 times before you.
Even if it's an aluminum ramp, Fred, we have the little thing. We may be able to, take it apart in 2 sections and take it out of the
Yep.
area and safeguard it and put it back in. The footings are in place. I'm just thinking out loud that I hate to disappoint the public in saying that we were going to make an improvement and we didn't. It's not anyone's fault, but we have to go back to the drawing
And
board.
that's why, Mr. Salanitro, you continue to be the most valuable
I don't
commissioner.
think about being valuable. I was late today.
I should mention that when I mentioned before about 5 security guys during the day on the weekends and 4 in the evening, and plus now we're going to have extra security on, 1 by the booth or 2 by the booth and 1. That's going to rack up some overtime.
Well,
We're going to be tight. It's going to be tight.
Public safety, I think, governs here.
I-
We
I'm
have a
not-
duty to make it safe.
I'm not arguing against that.
Yeah.
No, I know, and I
I'm
know, I
putting it out
appreciate
there.
you bringing it
Okay.
to
Well,
us.
I'm just wondering if you can do it with the existing staff, right? I mean, can you?
Yeah, I would
can
have thought you can. Why don't you look at it? I think you should be able to do it with existing staff.
Well-
Instead of having 2 next to the booth where they normally are, have 1 there, have them separated.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is that earlier, when Joe and I had a conversation, we talked about 5 security people, and then that's enough to cover those 2 things, and 4 at night. That's going to run into some overtime on the part of on our staff, and I'm putting it out there because in years past, when Mayor French was here, they wanted me to cut back on all overtime, and I did, and we do. and I will continue to try to do that, but it may cause some overtime.
Okay.
That's all.
So with respect to the overtime issue, would it be better to hire an additional security guard to
Well,
cover the extra?
that's what we discussed today,
Hang on.
Larry and I.
Well,
Could I
why
ask,
don't-
could I
sorry,
ask
sorry.
an operational question? And I'm going to ask Mr. Noto, because this starts to get into legal aspects of ADA. You know, the south ramp, meaning the ramp by the circle,
Right.
is fully, what I would call fully handicap compliant, with the one exception being that we have a gate that's a little too narrow there. But the ramp itself is the right slope, and it's street level and level with the parking. It frankly is adjacent to the majority of our handicap parking, and very handicap accessible. The question, I guess, is from a handicap perspective, can that be designated, and would that be considered as equal access?
There are rules in terms of distance traveled from point A to point B, so.
It's closer. It is
Yeah.
closer to the handicap parking.
Yeah, I mean,
You
if
have
it's
an
closer-
answer?
I mean, my answer would be yes, if you're not putting them out to make them go
Right.
travel farther to do the exact same thing.
Well, the only problem we would have is the
Well,
preference.
that's what they said.
If people want to be in the middle beach or they want to be at the north beach,
Sure.
they have a quarter-mile trek to get there in the sand.
Right.
But,
But that's the only way, quite frankly, that's the only way you get to North Beach anyway, really.
well, the north beach is totally not handicap accessible. We only have stairs there. We don't have a ramp.
Well, I mean, you did have an exception. If there's an exception to it being fully handicapped, then it's not fully handicapped. So the exception that you mentioned about the width of the gate not being, so it's not.
Well, that's
fully-
easily, I think that's easily fixed.
Great, and that's fine. If the central activities for the patrons are within the equal distance to that ramp, I think you might be okay with the rules of the ADA. We can have, we can review those numbers to make sure, because the administration office is the central activity for the facility, is what I would look at, right? So is that equal distance to the center gate, or is the south gate further away, which it obviously
No,
would be?
they're about equal distance.
All right, so as long as you're not creating a hardship for the a person who needs to use the ramp, and the travel distance is equivalent, I think we'd be okay. But if they want to go to the central part of the beach, the question that you're asking is, do we need to provide access, ADA access, at all of our beach entrances?
Right.
I think we may have to do that, because you can't limit one part of the beach for access to the handicapped and to another part. So every access point may in fact need to be handicap accessible. But we can get Lisa or somebody with,
Okay.
we can review the code for that.
Okay.
I think it's a great idea, by the way, and maybe Seaside Giants can get a shuttle thing going from one side of the beach to the other.
Another use for the tiki
Get the
scene.
balloon tires going, and we can get our patrons. There you
Can I
go.
ask a question? Can the middle booth be moved out by the lifeguard so that it's right next to that ramp?
Does it make sense
Yes,
from your operations?
Hold on.
yeah.
Hold on, but there's no stairs.
But there's a ramp.
You
so
don't
what do
need any stairs.
for? You're talking about the ramp, so why not move the middle booth there? I mean, the girls are going to be putting wristbands on, and the people have to walk down to the lifeguard check to get on the beach.
Well, that was what we were going to
I'm
try
happy
and
if
test.
that's what you guys have determined that's the most efficient, I'm happy for that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be more efficient.
How
you
big,
know?
how tough is that to do? It can't be that difficult, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, that would, in fact, that's relatively easy fix.
I think
because
it's worth trying.
You can keep the old booth operating while you put a new booth in down there, and then just rip out the old booth when you're done with it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
I don't think we can pay for a new booth.
No, we talked about
Yeah,
we're not
yeah,
doing
we
that.
talked about this,
We're
yeah.
not going to do that.
Linda has a question.
Sure, Linda.
Just
But-
one point is also we're talking about ADA. The ramp that you're discussing, which is near First Aid, is really meant for vehicle access. There's no railing there.
Yeah, again,
So
that
I
has
think
to
if
be
you're-
looked at.
If you're going to do that.
The slope of the ramp has to be looked at to make sure it's within 15%, and then the railing. So we may, but the investment of that, to make it a fully ADA compliant ramp, may be where our thought process was instead of going to the center, we'll go there. But let's check the code to make sure that we have the ability to do that. And you might want to get a little questionnaire and see what how the seniors are, or whoever needs to use the ramp, if they have any objections to do that.
So I'm sorry, so what is our
Most people that
instruction?
use the ramp in the middle are people with carriages.
Well, we have two, yeah, okay, so
You
we have two instructions. We're going to close the center ramp because it's
But how are you going to do
hazardous.
that if we don't have railings on the other one? There's no railings out there.
Well,
I hadn't
you were
thought of
gonna
that.
use-
Hold on. I hadn't thought of the fact that the middle ramp has no railings.
No, the south ramp doesn't have railings.
No,
Yeah, it
no,
does.
no.
No,
Sorry.
South
ramp does. The
So
one
let's
you're
just
asking
use-
us to
Hold
put
on,
the
Terry,
peop- yeah.
hold on.
Yeah.
The ramp where we had recommended that we move to and use has no railings.
Yeah, we can't use it.
That's correct.
So we can't use it then?
No.
Okay, so
You
we,
have to go to the south
We're
ramp.
back to the same old.
no, so we're back to the, so we're,
Putting railings on there would not be too difficult to
Well,
do.
yeah, and again, if putting, does it prohibit your current use of the ramp if you put the railings in there in terms of its width? You got to put railings on both sides.
Only if they were in the middle of it. But if we put in on
As
either
lo-
side.
You got to put them on the ends, you can't put it in the middle.
Because
Right.
we're moving our tractor through there every morning.
Okay,
That's how
Right.
we access the beach.
But you could put railings on each
Either
side.
side, which
I
you
mean, you're
need to.
talking about a 12-foot wide ramp.
which
Yeah.
accommodates your equipment, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and then obviously would accommodate,
And I don't think it's difficult for our guys to put railings there.
well, they have to be ADA railings, they have
Yeah.
to be certain height. You can't put wood railings in there.
No, metal.
Yeah. But that kind of a project is a relatively inexpensive project.
It's
as
within the
opposed-
budget of what we
Sure.
were going
Oh, sure.
to move forward. Why don't you guys look at that? I think, we're not going to I don't want to micromanage it, but the only concern that I have is that ramp shouldn't be used by the general public. That's been a problem. That's my concern.
You're talking about the O-ring.
Right, the old ramp, the ramp.
well, when you say it's been, in other words,
It's-
as Fred said, we've used it for 7 or 8 years. It's more of an accident waiting to happen.
It's been
rather than-
identified by us
Yeah.
that it is,
Yeah,
needs to be changed.
right. So how
We
do...
have prior notice.
Right, so when we had a plan, unfortunately, it didn't come off,
Right.
given the expenditure. So the question really becomes, what's our existing plan then? What would you, as our chief engineer, what would you recommend?
Obviously, we need to bring Lisa back,
Yep.
since she's our architect of record, and tell her we need to do something, and we'll talk about, maybe getting some fabrication aluminum product.
No, sorry, but I apologize. What about, are we going to put these?
Immediately,
Yeah,
if we have to, if the ramp that exists there, and the only shortfall of that ramp is the fact that it doesn't have railings, and railings would be a benefit to the ramp regardless of who uses it, maybe we should think about just putting the railings up.
You mean on the middle ramp?
yes.
Yeah.
The
Right.
first aid ramp.
The first aid
If
ramp.
you put aluminum
No,
ramp.
forget aluminum.
No, I'm just talking about the
point-
railings for
First
now.
point is, do we want railings on the metal ramp?
Okay, I'm going to say, I think that this is not working. I think we are stuck with our old ramp that we've been using until we come up with a better solution. Because I do think that we should go to Lisa Easton, because we have
Yes.
spent money on
Right.
this. I think we
Yes.
should go to her and ask for a modified proposal that is significantly less
Within our budget?
costly within our budget. Every time you say aluminum, I cringe, because aluminum in the sun is going to be a
That's what I-
bad
that's
solution,
what I was
but
just gonna say.
wood,
No, they
but I
put the
think we could
strips.
do something like that with wood planks or something, but so that it is removable. But I think going back to her and asking her to draw up a plan makes more sense than trying to retrofit railings that may or may not be ADA compliant and
And-
maybe worsening a situation rather than making it better.
Right, so,
We
let's-
should look at the whole
yeah.
picture.
thank you. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
So, perfect. And she should look at railings at the
Yep.
middle ramp as well.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, as an alternative solution.
So the charge for staff is to do what needs to be done to get Lisa back in there and analyze our existing situation and our near future
Yep.
considerations.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Well, we
So
really
the other
don't have
plan
much
is out,
choice.
is out.
We
It's-
have no
it's on
choice,
hold
as Commissioner
until-
Brett
yeah,
says, until we
it's on
can,
hold.
until we can do an exhaustive review.
Yeah, we
What
could,
makes
we
sense?
could save money by not putting a booth. We had a real nice booth we were putting.
As Fred
I
said,
think the
we come to a
architectural
decision.
issue was really it. I
We're
think it
going
was-
to
yeah.
status quo, no change for
Till
the
we
time
come up
being.
with a better
Till you
plan.
come up with a better, but you're charged with hiring Lisa Easton to come up with a better plan.
Yeah.
Right.
Linda?
Just very quickly, I recall a conversation with Bishop specifically. I think the staggering price tag that you got for the project was all-encompassing. It was not à la carte. If you do your ramp, it's X amount of dollars. If you do just the booth, it's X amount of dollars. And we talked about maybe extrapolating it and finding out, getting quotes on just the ramp. You know,
I think the
I'm
ramp
not-
was very costly.
Yes.
The word on the street of people that I've asked that have looked at the plans have said that it was things like the
Massive.
reinforced concrete. It
massive.
was, it was the Taj Mahal of ramps
Okay.
onto the beach.
Okay.
So I think we just need a modified drawing of a simpler ramp that
Right.
maybe will function
Okay.
just as well.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay?
Excellent. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, everybody. Any further questions, comments?
Motion to adjourn?
Say a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Sorry, I think of so much.